then when my dad got sick and then passed away. Sorry. Like that was when I really felt really disappointed, I guess, because like I thought we had more time. I heard that someone I really, really wanted to work for and the person that I wanted to really, really be my next job. I went back and I sent an email to the person that I knew was starting to hire, and I said, I know you're thinking about building a team, and if you need someone, let me know because I'm really interested, right? And they came back and they said, let's talk on Monday.
All the languages that you speak.
Me chiamo, je m'appelle, mi nombre es, watashi no namae, je irumun kudus imnida.
How do you psychologically handle that constant threat of knowledge expiring?
I think there's, again, two sides to this. So one is having a good foundational knowledge of stuff.
Rejection and feeling lost aren't enemies of success, they're the blueprint. Alex Radu went from unknown immigrant to speaking at AWS reInvent by turning vulnerability into velocity and failure into frameworks. This is a masterclass in strategic resilience.
Thank you for joining us on Tech Journey with the Data Dude podcast. I will start with this first question. If someone landed you a blank canvas and said, teach me to build a global tech presence from absolute zero, and you could only give them one framework, one systematic approach that encompasses everything you have learned, what would that framework be?
I think step one is being curious and showing up.
Okay.
You can't build community and you can't build impact if you don't show up and if you don't actually take interest and curiosity in other people, in technologies, in learning, in how things work, like how the world works, right? So you can't do that unless you have those mindsets going in. I think the second thing is being open to different people, different communities, different events, learning from people, reading a lot, listening a lot, and then putting all of that into kind of notes and documenting and learning. And I think the third part is doing something with that, right? So actually applying that. Whether that's like you with having a podcast, whether that's writing articles, whether that's joining a community. Like, for example, if you're into cloud, there's the AWS community builders that you can apply to join, and posting stuff on Dev2 or posting stuff on Medium or, having a newsletter that you manage. Posting on LinkedIn. So I think you need to have a bit of a strategy and you need to understand where your strengths lie. So whether that's in video, audio production, and maybe you want to make videos, put them on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you want to post them, and have a podcast, or have bite-sized learning, or find your niche and kind of speak to that.
Yeah.
Or whether it's writing and you're more comfortable with writing, or whether it's literally just doing in person. So maybe conference speaking, maybe you're more into that and kind of teaching people stuff that you're very good at and applying to conferences to teach that. So I think you need to find your people, you need to find the problem that you're trying to solve, and you need to find your channels and your way of expressing yourself to build that presence.
The tech world moves so fast that yesterday's expertise can become tomorrow's relevance. And I imagine there was a moment when you felt the ground shifting beneath you, when something you have invested heavily in learning started becoming obsolete. How do you psychologically handle that constant threat of knowledge expiring?
Every day, if not every week. But I think there's, again, two sides to this. So one is having a good foundational knowledge of stuff. So having a good foundational knowledge of technology and how it works, and infrastructure and engineering and, product and design and architecture, and understanding how all the pieces fit together. And I think I've been doing that constantly for the past like 10, 15 years. And that's really helped understand the whole and understand the perspective and like what's possible. I think that also helps you. So I actually went back to school. So I didn't do computer science in my undergrad, even though I became a software engineer. Long story. And then I decided that I actually want to go back and I want to do a master's in computer science part-time so I can solidify that kind of like academic foundational knowledge that I didn't have. So I knew how to build stuff and I understood how technology worked and I understood like how the things, you know, like how I can build things.
Yeah.
But I didn't really understand why I was building them that way and if there was a better way to structure them and to build them, right? So I went back to school and I learned the basics. Yeah, again. And after that, like I've kept on learning and there's always more to learn, but you just need to figure out what it is that you are interested in and what is most helpful to your chosen path. Because like the internet is fabulous, but there's just so much and there's only so much time you can dedicate. And I think it's fine to acknowledge that you don't know something, but you kind of need to understand where your knowledge stops and where you need someone else to come with their expertise. And I think that's the great thing about working in like teams and working in organizations is that you will find someone who is better at something than you. But the point is knowing who that person is and what they need to know and how they can help you and being able to reach out to them, right? And I think like that is like, you know, accepting that you will not know everything and you don't need to know everything and surrounding yourself with people that know more than you in whatever field it is that they know more than you and learning from them and being able to lean on them to bring that expertise to you, right? No one will know everything, but as long as you can understand kind of like roughly what the whole is and what the goal is, then you can bring in the other people that you need to kind of like help you progress. And I've changed roles many times. I don't want to say that I get bored, but I kind of do. Like, I always like to learn new stuff and to do new stuff. So, like, I've had many different roles in many different parts of, like, technology organizations because I want to be able to, one, understand how it all works and do the work, and two, understand, like, how I can then use that newfound knowledge to have a better understanding of how we can all work together better. So, I've done, like, architecture certifications for cloud, even though I'm not an architect. I've done product certifications because I used to be a product manager. Then I was a platform marketing manager. I was an adoption lead. I was a software engineer. I was a community manager. Now I'm an education and community lead for engineering practices. So like my jobs have changed so much over the years, but like the constant thing is I want to be in places where I can help people build better products, be happier at work, do meaningful work, and be able to kind of like bring everyone in a community together so we can all benefit from each other and like not duplicate work, not feel like we don't have the knowledge or the skills or the opportunities that we need. Like that is the key in my view to like how you can make teams and organizations work better, like making sure that people understand, you know, like where their knowledge ends and what they need to bring people in, and being able to do that and know who those people are and know what they're missing, right? I think like too often we are so focused on our little bit that we lose sight of the end to end, and that creates disjointed products, that creates disjointed experiences, that creates products that get obsolete because no one wants to use them because they're so bad. Right? So like the point isn't your little bit. Yes, you should do your little bit to the highest standard. You should be a bar raiser for your little bit. But you also need to understand how your little bit works with the rest of the little bits and how together they form that cohesive, delightful experience for people. Right? And I think like too often we don't have that orchestrator layer where we can have people that see the full picture and bring people together to understand how to make it seamless and how to connect it all together. So I think like that's a thing. I think you always have to be learning and relearning and unlearning things. I think when I first started like years and years ago, like people were super into, like ticket management systems. There are a couple of big players that have kind of like just crushed that market. Like you have the same solutions across, which is good because like if you're changing roles in that space, you have the experience and like the knowledge of how things work to be able to go and transfer that to a new organization. But at the same time, it's like the people that had knowledge of those systems, like they don't really have much to do with that specific system knowledge. But obviously, like they can bring practices and skills from how they used to manage that system to the new system. So I think like nothing's really truly like obsolete. It's just that the actual product has probably changed, but the best practice and like the things that you need to do and the skills that you have like are still usable. It's just that you need to understand how do you now transfer them from what used to be the up and coming technology to the new technology. And see, similarly with like AI, right? So I worked in cloud for about 5 years before I moved into engineering practices, and I'm seeing the same type of adoption kind of like loop and curve that we had with cloud, only that it's slightly more accelerated. And again, like there's nothing different. Like I'm talking simply about the technology, the actual like behaviors and like the hype and the news is almost exactly the same, except that it's happening much faster. So you can take that knowledge about how you learned about that, what happened with cloud, and you can then apply it to like, okay, what's going to happen with AI and try to figure it out, right? So I think like it's the nature of technology. It's always going to change. It's always going to grow. There's always going to be products that fall off. If you take like Netflix, for example, right? Like you had, what was it, Blockbuster? Like they went away and Netflix replaced it. But the desire of humans to be entertained and be able to watch, like visual production is still there. But now you see like YouTube starting to take over with like short dramas and stuff. So it's like, it's a constant, like what is it that people really want and what do you need to build into your product to make sure that people are continuously engaged and they still find value in your product more than in other products that are in the market. So it's more about like what makes you the best compared to all of your competitors, as opposed to having this like revolutionary idea. Because like at the end of the day, like most of the products that we have service a need that has probably been around for so long. Yeah. So it's just like how are you doing this better and how are you doing it compared to your competitors, right? Like,
so people like companies are just making the experience either better, seamless, and uplifting people's experience using the products. Thank you. And you mentioned something about maybe you change role when you get bored. But how do I know I'm in a job, and how do I know maybe this is the right time for me to change role? How do I know when I'm bored?
I have fresh experiences of this because I've changed roles in the past year. So after 5 years in cloud, I started realizing that it's a long time to be in the same kind of like space and the same position. And I built a team that was capable of doing their job without me there, which is my goal as manager. And I also realized that I didn't want to be a manager anymore, so I wanted to go back to being an individual contributor. And that was because I realized that most of my days and my weeks were filled more with like discussions and kind of like leadership pitches and kind of like it was too much talking and not enough doing for my liking. And I realized, right, I'm not 100% happy with like where I am right now. And I know that I want to go back to the things that give me joy, which are being in the community with people, building, being able to iterate.
Education,
Yeah, so I knew that happened. And I heard that someone I really, really wanted to work for. And again, this is weird, right? This is my way of doing it. So I have people that I want to work for in spaces that I want to work for.
Okay.
And the person that I was looking at that was starting to hire was in the space and the person that I wanted to really, really be my next job.
Wow.
And I had a discussion with my former manager and we discussed it, and I did talk to her previously too to say that I don't think I'm as happy as I used to be, and I think I need to change. And I was starting to recognize that, and she agreed. She was like, yeah, I know, like, you don't feel like you as much as you did, like a year ago. And that day after I finished that one-to-one, I went back and I sent an email to the person that I knew was starting to hire. And I said, I know you're thinking about building a team, and if you need someone with these set of skills and these experiences, let me know, because I'm really interested, right? And they came back and they said, let's talk on Monday, like 10 minutes later. And I was like, okay, that's great. And then they actually came and told me that they thought that I was super happy in my role, and they didn't want to poach me from like the team that I was currently in. And they were very happy that I reached out, because they didn't know how to reach out and ask me if I'm interested, right?
Wow.
So my advice is, know yourself and know how you're changing, and like kind of do some reflection and be like, is this really still what I want to do? Is this really still where I want to be? It was really hard for me to leave my team, but they were all really happy for me, because they knew that like I wanted to do something different, and like I taught them so much, and they were all super successful in their roles. So even though they were sad I was leaving them, we still have one-to-ones together like every couple of months. Like I'm still in touch with them, because like I still have a good relationship with them. But they were happy because they knew that I wanted to try something else, and they were like super excited for me, right? Wow. And like you need to know when the time comes, and also you need to be brave. Again, be brave and go and tell that person, hey, I'm interested. Even if you don't have something right now, like next time they get something and they're like, oh, that person would be really good for it, they're going to reach out and they're going to be like, hey, are you still looking for this? Like, do you still want to do this with me? And like, if you don't tell them, they don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And I've had the same thing with like some of the people that I've been mentoring through some like career changes. Yeah. And I keep telling them, I'm like, if you tell me that you want something, every time I'm going to see something, I'm going to be like, oh, could have told me he's looking for this role. I just saw an ad from like one of my communities. I'm just going to forward that to them and be like, hey, someone's looking for this kind of person. Like, do you think you want to have a chat? And like, it's like, it's easier to help people if you know what they need and what you're looking for. But if no one knows, like, they can never help you.
Yeah,
right? Because they don't even know. They're like, oh, you're super happy where you are. Like, why would I even ask you? Like, obviously you wouldn't be interested. And it's like, no, I am. Like, this is me telling you I am interested.
Wow, I totally agree with you. Being open makes a lot of things get executed, because we think people know what we want. And the bitter truth is that no one can read our minds.
Yeah.
Unless you speak up, you tell them what you want, what you are looking for, and when opportunity open, that they can easily just that you just gave. It's only if you know I'm looking for something that you can think about me. Okay, could you told me he's looking for this? Let me just maybe refer him or recommend him to this person. And thank you for that. We all know that you have driven massive platform adoption. But let's talk about the strategy that backfire spectacularly. In your journey, have you ever failed publicly before?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about it.
So this was part of the work that I was doing before I moved on, and we were working on improving some like platform-wide product content. And we didn't reach any of the targets we had. We knew they were high targets to improve everything at once, and we knew that it was a lot to ask of all the teams, because they were building some stuff at the same time, and there was just too much, and the kind of like content customer side wasn't getting prioritized, and we knew that it was a major like possibility.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. We managed to get to a good place where maybe like 70% of the products were engaged and were making improvements, and like that was good.
Yeah.
But the problem was the same teams had to do that for the kind of like V2 version 2 of that, and that wasn't happening, right? Because they were too busy building.
Yeah.
And we had something like 16 requirements for them to say, like this part of like the content, the experience is done.
Yeah.
I was just talking to my old team, I think last week. They have got down to 5, which is like the bare minimum 5. And that was because we never could get 100% on the 16 requirements we had for like the full thing. And we knew that it was going really slowly, and like the leadership was aware, but there was just too much pushback because there was just too much to do, and this was kind of getting deprioritized. Now, there are sometimes times where you just have to accept that something's not going to happen. However, the good side was people were talking about it, people were being aware about it, and people were we were upskilling them in the thinking and the skills to be able to do that, even though maybe they didn't actually have all the time to implement all the changes, right? So it was a failure from our part, because we expected to be able to push the change, but then again, change takes a lot of time.
You have lived an incredible global journey, but I'm betting there was a moment, maybe 2 a.m. in a foreign country, where you questioned everything, where the dream felt like delusion. Can you take me to that exact moment?
I think so. The first one is actually even before I started my global journey. So I was the first in my family to actually leave the country. I was also the first in my family to do like many degrees abroad. And the first moment was when my dad stopped talking to me, when I basically went to them and told them like, hey, so this is happening and I'm really planning to leave, and like I'm not going to live in Romania anymore, and I'm planning to move to the UK, and I've got into the universities that I wanted. And he basically didn't talk to me for like 3 months. It was like we basically didn't exist to each other. And eventually, like, we were in the car, and we were picking up my mom from work, and I was in the back. And at one point he was just like, oh, so we need to go and get you luggages, like suitcases. And I kind of like stopped for a second, and I was like, is he talking to me? Like, he hasn't talked to me in months. Like, I don't know. Is he talking to me? And he was like, when do you want to go? And I was like, oh, you're talking to me. Okay. Well, I was like, and whenever, like, the weekend is fine. Like, it's okay. And then he was like, and by the way, you need to take your driver's license test, like, before you go, so you have it in case of anything. And at that point, I think we were like 2 months before I had to leave. And I was like, okay, sure. So I had to do my whole driver's license. I passed my test 2 days before I had my flight to the UK. And my driver's license actually came by post when I wasn't in the country anymore. So like, it was all like very, like, he went from, is she really going to do this? And like my whole family, my extended family, like they were like, oh, like, who do you think you are to like move abroad? And like, you know, like your parents can't afford this. And I was like, I'm not expecting them to afford it. Like, I'm going to be working to like survive. And it was like, it was all very, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? At the same time, I was totally like, I'm not coming back. Like, I'm going to make this work, whatever it takes. Like, I'm going to make this work. Like, I am not coming back to be like, oh, you were all right. Like, I can't do this. Like, you know. So I think like that was the first time. And then over the years, it's happened in like many other countries. Like, I was in Belgium for my placement year, and things weren't going great. Not because of the work, but because it was kind of like, it was a bit like exploiting the placement students. And I was working like 12 hours a day. Like, I only had an Erasmus grant that I was paid by, which was like 600 euros a month or something. And it was all kind of like getting too much. And at that point in time, like, there was one day when I literally was in the bathroom and I was looking in the mirror and I was like, who am I anymore? Like, what am I doing here? And I basically like emailed my director of studies back in the UK, and I was like, hey, listen, I just want to run this past you, and I just want to understand if this is normal, like if this is what other placement students go through. And after that, she was like, oh no, like, this is not okay. So I actually finished my placement maybe like 3 months before I was meant to, and I had to do my write-up and everything like on the time that I spent like 6 months with them. And then I had to decide where I'm going. And what I did was messaged one of my friends from uni and I was like, hey, I'm unexpectedly coming back. Like I rented my room in the UK to someone else while I was away.
Okay.
So I didn't really have a home to come back to because like there was someone else living in my home.
Yeah.
And I was like, could I stay in your living room for like 3 months? And my friend Anne, who is amazing, and she lives in London. After university, she moved back to London, and we're still really good friends. But she was like, yeah, sure. And we kind of just made it work. And then I went back to my old boss from like my job that I used to work before I moved away. And I was like, hey, listen, I was literally on a megabus from Belgium back to the UK. And I messaged her and I was like, hey, listen, I know this is unexpected, but any chance I could have some shifts? I'm coming back to the UK. I didn't expect this. And I know that you probably don't have, like, you don't need me. But if you do need me, like, I will take anything you need me to do. And like, I'll come back to work. And she was like, of course, like, when can you start? And I'm like, well, I'm back tomorrow. And she's like, great. Can you come on Sunday? And I was like, okay. So like it kind of worked out, but like I think like that to me, like in the early years of my career, like solidified the importance of having a good community and good network and good people and like always leave on like good terms. So over time doing that and having to go through those moments when you're like, what am I even doing? I've kind of learned what really counts and what really matters and like how you go back from I have no idea what to do now to let me make a plan and let me reach out to people and see what's going to work out and like try to make it work. And I think like that's still how I continue to do things.
So you may not know how great or the impact you are making, are influencing people's lives. Trust me, but they are. And this will take me to the next question. How has this experience shaped your decision-making framework when facing uncertainty now?
So I think they did a lot because so all of the things around, learning how to do things yourselves, doing the best thing you can do, having like a good work ethic, being nice to everyone, like saying hello to everyone from like the person that welcomes you at the door to the people that, like go and bring you fruits every week or to the people that like help you run amazing conferences or like, the AV folks, the cleaning folks, the catering folks, like, like being respectful and being welcoming and appreciative to everyone, regardless of like what role they play, in your life. Like that's a really important life lesson. And I think like my parents taught me that since I was very, very young. But also I think being open to the other cultures and the other ways of working, like throughout my kind of like global journey and work journey, it's been kind of like just compounding. So like you have that good solid foundation and then like you have like additional things that you're starting to build because like you're learning and taking so much from everyone.
Wow. Let's imagine there is a little baby, a daughter that also wants to live, for another country to pursue higher education, but she's also facing the same dilemma you were in as your own age. What advice would you give such lady or such a girl because she doesn't want to offend a parent and she's being scared of what if I fail, people will laugh at me, or what if I come back, or what if I couldn't cope?
I think two things stand out for me when I look at how I made the decision, right? So the first is know what you want and have a plan. So I started, because applications for universities like in the UK happen like the year before you even graduate and all of that, right? I started researching going away probably about 2 years before I graduated. So I was maybe like 10th grade. I was maybe like 16. And I started looking at, okay, so what do I need? Like I need an English language certificate. I need to be applying to like all these universities. I'll need to make a like personal statement. And I think the second part of that is being brave. And I think it's easy to say that when you're on the other side and you've went through all of this and you've done all of this.
Yeah.
But you have to be brave. You have to be brave to tell this to like your friends and your family. You have to be brave to leave all of that and build a new life like somewhere else. You have to be brave to ask for help. You have to be brave to go and take like advantage of all the new people and all the new resources that you're going to get access to. And like, you have to be brave to just admit that, yes, you might be able to fail. But if your plan, you know, like if your plan and your goal are super clear and like you've really prepared for it, the chances of you failing are super low, right? And even if you fail, it might not be, this is it. It might be, okay, so how do we pivot? Like, how do we do something out of this, right?
Yeah.
Because like, as we talked in the first question, it did kind of fail like many times, but I knew, okay, I'm now making a plan. How do I get back from this? And like, who do I need to reach out to start ticking off the stuff that I need to do to get back to like the path I want to take?
You speak different languages.
Yes.
You have 1,500 plus day Duolingo streak.
Yes.
And if most people hear this, they would think, that's impressive discipline. But I suspect there is something deeper. Yes. What is language learning actually doing for you psychologically?
Because I've lived in quite a lot of countries, right? I started seeing the joy that it brings and the fast forward in connection with the people from those cultures and from those places, right? And every time I go to a new country, I try to learn like some of the basic stuff. And as I was saying, in Romania, like we learn 2 foreign languages on top of Romanian as a like basic. So like everyone finishes with that. So I actually learned 3. My extra one was Latin because I did a high school degree that included Latin, which makes it easier for me to learn Latin-based languages as well. And then I went to work in Barcelona for a bit at Cat and Crush, and my colleagues there were really nice, and I told them that I want to practice my Spanish and like I want to learn a bit more about my Spanish. And they decided that we're going to do Spanish mornings and English afternoons. So all of them spoke English as well. But I told them, I'm like, if you could speak to me in Spanish in the morning, like that's going to make it better. I also made friends with the ladies that used to make our lunches. So they only spoke Spanish. So that was great for me because I couldn't default to English when I didn't know how to say something. So like that was really nice because like I come in the morning and I try to speak to them, like speak like a little bit. And like I couldn't just kind of like have an out and be like, oh, let's just switch to English, you know? So I think that helped me really well. And we go on holiday to Spain quite a lot. And I'm like the default, like my family just pushes me forward and like, you go and speak to like, you know, everyone that we need to speak to, which is great. Like I love Spanish. And then I went to visit our office in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and I was in the kitchen and I was making a coffee. Someone walked in and started speaking to me in Spanish, and I responded in Spanish. And like they continued speaking to me. And then, like, they were like, so are you in our office? And I was like, no, actually I'm just visiting. And they're like, oh my God, but your Spanish is so good. And I was like, it's not really, because I don't really practice it that much, like with actual people. But they were like, it's really, really good. And I was like, well, thank you. And they were like, but like, where do you live? And I was like, in the UK. And they were like, really? Like, so like, and like that instant connection like happened so quickly. And like, they gave me this like link with like the best places around the office to like go and have food. And like, it just kind of like, what could have been like just a hi bye kind of like in the kitchen turned into like a super fast forwarded conversation and connection with that person, right? So like I think like that to me is like amazing. And that's why I kind of really like the languages.
Let's play a game. With all the languages that you speak, teach me how to pronounce my name. Okay, let me say, teach me how to say, okay, my name is Kudus in all the languages.
I'm going to start with Romanian, which is probably the hardest.
Okay.
So you can say I am, which is probably easier than my name is.
Okay. I am.
So in Romanian, you would say sunt, S-U-N-T.
Okay,
Kudus.
Sunt Kudus.
Yes. So sunt means I am, or you could say mă cheamă, which means they call me
They
like
call me
kudus.
Kudus. Okay.
Yes.
Makiamo Kudus.
Yes. So like either of those works, like people will understand what you say, but like the first one is like a little bit easier. In French, you'd say je m'appelle,
Je
like I
m'appelle
am named.
Kudus. Okay.
Yes. In Spanish, you would say my name is. So mi nombre es.
Come again.
Kudus. Mi nombre.
Mi nombre. Mi.
Mi nombre.
Mi nombre.
Es.
Es.
Kudus.
Kudus. Mi nombre es Kudus.
Yes. So like mi means my.
Okay.
Nombre means name. And es means is.
Oh, I see. Mi nombre es Kudus.
So the Japanese is a little bit longer, and it's Watashi no namae wa kudus.
Watashi no namae Kudus.
Desu. It's like they also have an end at the end, which is like really, really fun. But Japanese is really hard. Like with Japanese, I try to not be like with my name is. I'm just like, thank you, please. I'm sorry. You know, like, because like Japanese is super, super hard. And for like Korean, it's like, 제 이름은 구두스입니다. I think like something like that. Like my 제 이름은 means name. 구두스입니다 means I am. They have a very different arrangement of like the sentences where the verb is always at the end. So that was, I think the good thing about learning different languages is, especially if they're not from the same root language, they wire your brain differently and they make new connections between your neurons. So like the actual way that a language works, if you learn one that works differently, like your actual brain has to do some work to like connect different parts of your brain. Which is also part of the reason why I like learning languages, because it's like it's very good for your brain basically, and it opens up like new connections that make your brain better basically.
Wow. And it just inspired me to learn another language, and I will give it a try, trust me. I know that success at your level comes with a hidden cost that people don't talk about openly. There's a moment when you look at what you have built and wonder if the person you have become is what the person you were sacrificed.
I think the biggest sacrifices that I've made are around time with my family back home. I think I did regret quite a bit that I wasn't really home that much. Like I would go home maybe a couple weeks a year. And when my dad got sick and then passed away, like that was when I really felt really disappointed, I guess, because like I thought we had more time. But you can never know how much time you have left. And I think like when that happened, and it happened about 7 years ago, things changed where I actually started thinking about like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm spending enough time with like my partner and my mom and my family and my sister and my nephew and like my grandma back home. And like, I wanted to make sure that I can make the time, and I am making the time to do the things that matter to me outside of just who I am as a professional and at work.
What are you unwilling to sacrifice for further success?
Time. I am very I'm very open and honest about the fact that I do 110% when I'm at work, but when I'm not at work, I'm not at work. Like it's like you get everything from me at like more 100%. Than expected. But when I'm off, I'm off. Like that's it. And I think it's taken me a while to set up those boundaries and to learn that. And it's unfortunate that I've had to lose people to make those changes.
Wow.
So I think like I would like to help other people not make the same mistake. And I tell my team the same, like, that I managed. Like, I used to tell them, I'm like, you are only expected to work when you're expected to work. I expect you to have a life, and I expect you to respect your own boundaries and set your own boundaries, because like no one will do it if you don't do it.
Let's say you are to train someone in a first speaking opportunity. How would you do that?
The best way that I've discovered is you need to take them through a few steps. So first, they need to pick something that they are passionate or relate to. So like their topic, you then work on kind of like building out that topic and like what were the story points, what's their narrative, what kind of like evidence and interesting things they can bring. Plus points if you can bring like visuals, demos, videos, like something to kind of like break up the atmosphere. Also plus points if you can actually engage with the audience. So if you can put in kind of like a live poll, or if you can have people raise their hands, ask questions, get some answers from the audience, make it feel like a conversation, not like you're talking at people. And then after that, you then need to start kind of like crafting your content and your story. And then there's a lot of practice, and you need to kind of like go and give it to a few different people, get some feedback, get some like test out like your visuals, like can you see them from far away, your voice, your presence. There are a couple of exercises that you can do just to kind of like try to find what your pace and your flow is. I think people doing public speaking for the first time also tend to go really fast, so you need to train them to go a bit slower. It's like, I think, so it's like you have the first part, which is getting your topic and getting your content ready, which people think is the hardest, but it's not the hardest. It's probably the easiest. And then you have the actual like presence and practice part, where you actually have to go through delivering that, preparing for unexpected questions, preparing for having to shorten or lengthen like your talk if you have to fill space. So I think like there's a lot that actually goes into the practice compared to the actual content that you're preparing. The content is probably the easiest part, because you can do that on your own and you can kind of like recraft it a few times, but then you actually need people there to help you practice your delivery in practice, like how it's being received by the audience. So I think also you need to know who you're speaking to, like having some information about like who are the audience, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Wow. To me, you just gave a masterclass on how to become a public speaker. Trust me. And thank you very much, Alex. This has been insightful, and I've learned a lot. And I'm very sure people watching this, they have also learned a lot. Trust me. And for people who would like to follow you, follow your journey, know more about you, know more about what you do, where can they connect with you?
I think the best place is on LinkedIn. I have my full name on LinkedIn, which is Maria Alexandra Radu, which is like my full name. There are not many of us on LinkedIn, so you're probably going to find me. I think in that picture also had pink hair, so that's definitely me. And if you can't find the LinkedIn, I do have a website at alexradu.rocks. That was the only domain I could find. And you can find my LinkedIn in there and a couple of the other things that I'm doing. So I've recently reworked that webpage, so it looks way more fancy than it used to.
Okay, that's amazing. And this will be the end of the conversation. Alex, thank you very much. And on behalf of the team, we are saying a big thank you.